Let's go!
There was a topic that I wanted to touch on briefly, which is about like the things that I love about fighting games. I read so many impressions on like so many people like telling others what my feelings are without it actually coming from me. And I hear a lot of like crazy things that aren't technically what I would say. So I feel like this is a good situation to sort of establish what these things are and what makes me like this genre of game so much. And it's the things that make me love fighting games, right? The things that I love about fighting games, and ultimately what boils down to a game that I'm going to put a bunch of time into, and one that I would essentially like to grind my ass off and play. Because for anyone that's anyone, the big secret to getting good at fighting games, and we've discussed this before, is to play a shit ton of it. Is to literally, and now we are gotten to the point where anyone that is trying to get good at a game knows that you just have to grind it, right? You just have to get to the point where you have to play the holy hell out of the game so much and become familiar with so many situations in a fighting game. That practice is going to make you a lot better. You just need to play the game a lot and try to improve, right? At least focus on the things that you're doing poorly and try to improve. But that's a lot of time, right? You're going to spend a ton of time with this game, and with there being so many fighting games, what is the thing that is going to make you stick to one certain game? And I have some things, right? I for sure have things about fighting games that make me like certain genres of fighting games more than others, whether or not it's like team games or characters with scarves or characters that look like Ken or edgelord characters or all these different things that, you know, people have memed that makes me love fighting games, or games with parries. And some of those things are definitely true. But I think to sort of boil down the things that I love about fighting games, I would like to start with the one game, right? The one game that makes me really happy and it always feels like I'm going home, and that's technically Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Third Strike's a game where you have so many options in the game's core mechanics as a player to do so much, and that's really important to me. The game is actually not super combo heavy, right? Like aside of what a character like Yoon can do, which becomes like, you know, combo heaven, a lot of combos in that game are very short. They're 2 or 3 hits. Your confirms are pretty limited. There's only so much per character that you're really going to be comboing into that it's not really a combo heavy game. And I get accused of only liking combo heavy games for a lot of the time. Third Strike's a game where I feel like my approach and the way I am going to approach the opponent and approach the game is unique than any other player. Can be unique than the way some people will approach the game in other ways. Like the way you play Third Strike and the way you approach its parry system, approach its, you know, all its different system mechanics and supers and things like that is going to be really unique for every character. And that boils down to like approach and options. That's a big part. The other part that I really love about fighting games is, what's the best term I can use to describe this? I'll just say it's decision making, right? I feel like decision making and options in fighting games can sort of go hand in hand because they are pretty similar. But I like fighting games that have me make a lot of decisions fast, right? Where you don't even have time to really dwell on the previous decision very much. You just have to move forward with the next decision. I love that part, right? I like team games because there's so many decisions you have to make even on the character select screen. But the games that give you options usually lead to a lot of decision making. And the best example of that is Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike are games that require the player to make so many rapid fire decisions that it's nuts. That it's almost impossible to follow the people that are at the highest level of the game and realize how quick all this action is and how quickly they're able to snap on this decision and do that stuff. So much to the point where it seems like so many fighting games nowadays that are sort of toned down are about getting you to a point of mix, right? Where I'm going to mix the opponent up and I'm going to get a 50-50 on them. Like my big goal at the end of all of this is to get a 50-50. And to me, that's kind of funny that like people are obsessed with this mix moment of getting them to a 50-50, because in my eyes, like 50-50, that's like nothing. That means you guess right once and you're good. And it's a half-half guess. That's not bad at all. So many classic fighting games, like your options are like 1/3, right? Or even way less, where the 50-50 option changes into many other options, and you have way less of a guess. To me, it's like you can boil down a lot of these games where that decision of like, do I block this way or that way, right, happens so quick that it doesn't even seem like it was that big of a decision. It was just something that you did, and you just did it really fast because you felt like it was the right decision, you know, or you reacted. I love fighting games like that. I like ones that allow decision making to happen on the offensive and defensive end, and that's where Killer Instinct is a very unique game because of the combo breaker system. There's so much that goes into breaking a combo and counter breaking a combo and what you're doing with each combo that you're sort of playing a game in a game. To me, it's very satisfying. It's satisfying. You feel like you sweat the most when you play these games. It's another reason why I like a game like Mortal Kombat X, because those 50-50 split decisions are made so frequently. Even though MKX is a game that's like kind of canned, right? I sort of complain a lot about a game like Mortal Kombat 11, and I'm like, I feel like I'm doing the same few things over and over again. I'm not making a lot of really big decisions most of the time. I'm kind of sticking with these few things that are really good and repeating this process of what works, right? And MKX isn't really that different. You have options. You have more options for a combo in Mortal Kombat X. And your approach is pretty similar, where this string is a good mid starter. This is my low starter. This is my overhead starter. I'm going to sort of go in between these few options and just recycle them to see what works, you know? However, the big difference in a game like MKX is the speed at which you are making those decisions. It's fast, man. It's really fast. Bam, 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 bam. Oh, I'm dead. Bam, bam, bam. I got back into it. Bam, 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 bam. Oh, I beat him. To me, that's really cool. It's cool how fast the scale and pace of a match can flip back and forward, and that really is depending on how familiar you are with your opponent, how familiar you are against their characters and their options, and how good of a decision-making process you can make. Because you would think in a game like Mortal Kombat X, which is a game that is so prevalent with 50-50s and what would feel like guessing, you would think that the results of the highest level of competition would be all over the place, right? You would think that, but it's not. Like, in fact, the best players at the game were kind of consistently the best players at the game almost throughout the entire game's life cycle. So there was clearly a decision-making process and an execution to that game, even though it felt very guess-heavy, that some people are just really good at in comparison to others. And it's the speed at which that stuff happens that makes me really excited. I don't want everything to be super guess heavy. I just like fighting games that give me, number one, a lot of options, and number two, allow me to make a lot of decisions with those options at any given point. To me, that makes some of the most fun fighting games in the world. Also, granted, options also complements things like combos. And here is where a game like the Marvel vs. Capcom series really starts to shine. In a game like Marvel vs. Capcom, between almost any of the iterations, you have so many crazy unique things that each character can do that really allows for a unique playstyle per person playing. That is so enjoyable. I love fighting games that allow freedom and expression in its characters. Like, that is such an important part of fighting games in general. And it does seem like a lot of fighting games lately have taken away expression of characters. They've taken away the parts where it's like, oh, I know exactly who's playing this just by watching them play. That result is by and large because characters lose options. There's only so many options on a character, so it can be kind of hard to really establish yourself as being you through those options. But if there's enough options and enough things and enough combo routes and enough, you know, execution that a game will offer its characters and its roster, then you're really going to start seeing certain players shine. You're like, damn, nobody plays like that. That's got to be this person. Damn, nobody lands this stuff except this person. That's so important. To me, that's like one of the defining factors of fighting games. I personally hate it when I see one character on screen and I have no idea who can be playing this character the entire time, just because there's a limited amount of options and there's a limited amount of things that the character can do. And the other big thing that I love about fighting games is honestly just characters, right? I'm not the kind of dude that can play, and I've described this before, a grayscale fighting game and just play it on mechanics alone. I can't. I need something to get attached to. I need fighting games to give me a reason to love them. I grew up loving a lot of different fighting games, of course, but they had reasons for me to want to invest into them. I don't want to just grind on something for the sake of it being new, and I'm just going to grind on the new thing. No, this game needs to give me a reason to love it, you know? It needs to give me something at the very start. Like maybe there's all this layers and depth and I have to crawl and scratch through all of this to eventually get to this point where it's like absolutely dope and amazing. But to me, like a fighting game should immediately throw something at you that makes you want to just play the shit out of it. That makes you want to learn these individual characters. That makes you want to really jump in and dive in and grind out and find all this crazy interesting stuff that you can possibly do. That's really important, and that can be done throughout a variety of ways, between character selection, between even visuals, between netcode. Like, all these things will complement those aspects when you're trying to get into a fighting game. Those are the big things for me personally, right? Those are the big things that invest me and get me invested into fighting games. But even over the past, I don't know, I'd say like 4 to 5 to even 6 years, there's only a couple of fighting games that really grabbed me and got me to the point where I just grinded the hell out of that game for, you know, 6 months and more, or grinded the game for even 3 months and beyond. And most other games, like I'll play for the first month or two, and sometimes it just doesn't catch me. And the best modern example of that is, I think, Dragon Ball FighterZ, which was incredible in that first month, like the most magical game ever. But after that first month and dealing with the game's netcode, once again, the thing I love about fighting games, it just didn't hook me. So it didn't hook me until way later. And then you get games like Power Rangers, and just through gameplay mechanics, even though I don't like Power Rangers, that game really grabbed me and made me want to go back and play it every once in a while. The last game I really grinded and really wanted to get better at, because I really enjoyed the game and it had a few characters that I personally loved in it, even though it didn't have a lot of stuff that everyone else personally loved, was Marvel Infinite. And we all know the story of Marvel Infinite. I don't need to reiterate it again, but it did enough for me and had the characters that I loved so much, with great netcode, as well as an insanely open-ended tag system that set up for situations and results that were almost unpredictable, that were just like, man, this game is wild. It was so much fun to me. And I put a ridiculous amount of time into that game for those first like 3 or 4 months. I loved it, man. But before that, I'd say it was probably Mortal Kombat X. I played so much MKX, dude. It was ridiculous. That game was an absolute blast, and even despite its horrific netcode at the start, the game was fun enough and had enough crazy characters that made me really want to just keep playing. We played the holy shit out of that game in that first year. And then before that was Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct was definitely a game. Once again, had good netcode, had rapid-fire decision-making. Were the combos specifically hard? Not really, but the game was running at a pace that was so quick compared to other fighting games, and the decision-making process that you just had to think about so much in every given moment. The game was ridiculously fun. Loved it, right? Absolutely loved it because of that. And then obviously you go all the way back to Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a game that's full of characters and visuals that are just amazing and has all this unique elements per character and combo variations, and you can definitely tell the individuality of player to player. That's Marvel 3, man. Marvel 3 is the most player expression fighting game, one of the most player expressed fighting games there is. And that's what's great about it. And those are really like a few fighting games that in the past 10 years or so I can boil back to, and the ones that I love the most. So granted, I'll give any fighting game a chance, right? I will give any fighting game to introduce something new and weird, and I'll give it a chance and try, you know, some characters or something that I've never really been into before, and really maybe fall in love with something. But for me personally, a combination of those elements, or all of those elements in a game, are the things that truly, and I realize over time now, are what make me love fighting games. But I'm actually curious, especially on the perspective of anybody else that's watching this or has played fighting games, like what are the things that make you love a fighting game? Is it the characters that immediately get you into it? Is it the netcode? Is it the graphics? Is it the mechanics in general? Everyone has their ism of what makes them love a specific fighting game, and it's really interesting to see what those things are on a person-to-person basis, because this is going to vary wildly. This is all the things that I love about fighting games, but some people are going to like slower, methodical fighting games and really appreciate the nuanced gameplay of like a grounded footsie fighting game, you know? And even though that's not me, I'm willing to give those games a shot, and maybe they'll fall in love with it in a similar way that I love my own stuff. So yeah, I think fighting games are amazing because of these reasons, that there is so much variance per game. And it seems like most fighting games right now are sort of lacking those options in many ways. So I would be very happy to see them go back to the classic design and the classic method of giving characters a lot of options, giving players a lot of options in their games with smarter mechanics, you know? I hope that's the way it is moving forward, but I always think there honestly is something for everybody in this genre, because that's truly what makes it special. is that everyone is so different. As long as you got your character, as long as you got that thing that you find hella fun, you'll always have a reason to go back to it.